Welcome to the House of David, Life Everlasting, a PBS television series that will chronicle the life and times of the House of David. We are so happy that you're with us, but before we move on, we have to tell you about our underwriters. Those are the folks that helped us bring you this presentation.
Telling incredible stories and keeping the past alive, Moondog Productions is proud to bring you the great history of the House of David in Southwest Michigan. Find out more about Moondog Productions by going online to moondogpro.net.
The House of David Museum is proud to tell the stories of Southwest Michigan's rich history. Located in St. Joseph, Michigan, the House of David Museum has a wide array of memorabilia for your viewing pleasure. To schedule a tour, call 269-325-0039.
Post-production facilities provided by True Blue Farms in Grand Junction, Michigan. True Blue Farms has been contributing to the overall health and wellness to people all over the world for over 100 years with blueberries. Find out more at truebluefarms.com.
Telling Southwest Michigan's history through radio and podcast. Rob Bird's Moondog Show and the House of David podcast are happy to be a part of telling this great story. Find Rob Bird's Moondog Show or the House of David podcast at podbean.com.
Thanks for staying with us. I'm your host, Rob Bird. On this episode of House of David, Life Everlasting, we're going to take a deeper dive into baseball. The House of David baseball team was known for many things. Their antics on the field, traveling from state to state, breaking the color barrier, but most importantly, playing exceptionally good baseball. This piece of House of David, Life Everlasting documentary film deals with just that. After that, Chris Siriano will join me here in the studio, as well as baseball historian Phil S. Dixon, to talk about it a little bit more. We'll see you really soon back here in the studio on House of David, Life Everlasting. Traveling from town to town isn't an easy life, but these men of the House of David relished every minute. This unique part of baseball history certainly helped shape and mold the game we know today.
They kept baseball alive. The House of David, through playing, and traveling to towns and things like that, they were a moneymaker for those towns as well, not only for the House of David. So sometime the House of David coming in, it's going to be the biggest gate of the year. And so people look for the House of David to come in. People knew who the House of David was. Today it's kind of ironic. I talk about the House of David and there are people who never heard of them. But back in that time, if you knew anything about baseball and you didn't know anything about the House of David, you need to go sit down somewhere because you really didn't know anything about baseball. The House of David was just that famous. And so they had no problem getting top players that were not part of the colony, because their reputation, and they knew they were going to make money. And a ball player, if he wanted to hone his craft, he could go out with the House of David, play with them a whole year or whatever. He's going to bid with Ray Eldon. Ray Eldon is connected to Major League Baseball. And if you got anything, you could go somewhere right from the House of David and not even be a member of the colony.
The House of David baseball team wasn't just a bunch of exceptional baseball players. They were also entertainers. From the Pepper game to donkey baseball, over the years, the House of David teams gave every fan an experience far greater than just another baseball game. It was a show.
Donkey baseball was their promoter's idea. Matter of fact, Ray Eldon, I've seen things, actually he promoted the Dizzy Dean tour. And they came to interview Dizzy, and Dizzy was busy, and he tried to get them to interview him. He said, I'm the creator of donkey baseball. And the reporter who wrote the story, he said, I thought that was pretty interesting. He said, I almost fell for it. But Ray Eldon, out of Muscatine, Iowa, invented donkey baseball. But remember, he's the promoter for the House of David team. So he brings this into the House of David. And they use it as an extra attraction. So, for instance, 1934, the Dizzy Dean Tour, they played the Kansas City Monarchs in Wichita, Kansas. After the game, they have a donkey ball game. So people stood around for the donkey ball game just as much as they did to see Dizzy and Daffy Dean. And of course, Dizzy and Daffy Dean are two of the greatest pitchers in the world, 1934. So the donkey baseball rivaled the Dean boys. And so, yeah, that's a Ray L. Doan, their promoter idea. And of course, he could institute it. And I've seen pictures with Grover Cleveland Alexander riding on the donkey. So it was just another interesting way to get people to the ballpark. They had to be creative. People just didn't come because they were good baseball players. They came because they were good baseball players who could do so much more. And so when you came to see the House of David, you were in for a real treat. And donkey baseball was one of those treats.
I never met a person at the House of David or City of David didn't want to talk about baseball. And fortunately for me, one time when I was over there visiting Melvin and Hubert Tucker, their brother, John Tucker, was visiting from Florida. Now, John Tucker, he was the clown prince, if you will, of the House of David. And I didn't really know. I didn't have an introduction to him, but I just suspected this is John Tucker. What a gregarious kind of guy he was. And we started talking, and he wanted to talk about baseball. And he said, let me give you a little. He asked me this question. He says, look, can you run from first to second or second to third? Which can you run the fastest, from first to second or second to third? Now, I had to think about that because I hadn't heard this. Maybe you have, and he said, nah, you can run from first to second a lot quicker. Why is that? Well, there's a shortstop between a second and third, And he said, let's go a little bit further here. Let me give you a little bit of my philosophy of life. I've had a good life. He says, look, don't bring work home with you. Don't try to live on a liquid diet. Go to bed the same day you got up. And learn to hit the curveball. His philosophy of life. It did him well. They named a street after him. Tucker Drive in St. Joe was named after John Tucker. He was one player, and I gave a picture or two of Tucker and others to the Baseball Hall of Fame, and that's why they gave me my lifetime pass to the Hall of Fame.
Alec, how do you like it here with the House of David Baseball Club?
I liked it fine down here the spring days. I've had a nice spring, good training, taking the baths and the water. Really, I believe that I got in shape quicker than I have for a number of years. Do you think this water and this bath has any effect on your hair, make it grow longer or thinner or come out easier or anything like that?
Yes, it's very good.
Well, I don't have to be bothered with long hair unless I want to, so if we get where there's no barbers and run out of Gillettes, well, I may have a beard one of these days, too.
They used to say.
Well, they used to say all I need was a shave and a haircut and I was ready to pitch, so all you boys with your beards and long hair, I won't even have to shave now to get ready. I can just walk out there and start pitching.
Yes, that's right, Alec.
I'll give you a low target here, Em. That's the boy.
Despite the antics and players not being well known, the House of David attracted so many fans to see first-class baseball. Often packing the stands, the House of David was still the hottest ticket in town.
It's not like a major league team where you can go in and you can see the box scores and if you go to see this team, it's going to have these certain players on it. So the players weren't as well known. Now they knew that it was going to be good baseball because the House of David recruited these great players. So they couldn't get you there on the players' names, and unless it was Doc Talley or somebody like that. But otherwise, people didn't know who was on the team. So by using the House of David name itself, they made the House of David name stand for something. And so all of these things were part of what the House of David stood for. And so whoever was on the House of David, you knew you were going to get that pepper game. Like I say, you might get the donkey baseball during the 30s, right? And but you were going to get good baseball, and even though you didn't know who they were till after they left. And so it was a great marketing great marketing that they had, and a lot of that can be attributed to Ray Eldon. 1934, the House of David enters into the Denver Post Tournament, one of the most prestigious tournaments in the country. And that same year, the tournament allowed their first African-American team, the House of David. So Grover Cleveland Alexander wanted to win that tournament right along with Ray Eldon. And of course, they had been traveling the country, and they knew the Monarchs had a good team because the Monarchs beat them most nights. So they said, how can we get this $5,000, which was the prize, a lot of money in the Depression? So they decide they're going to add 2 players to their team. They wire back east, and they wire for a catcher by the name of Bill Perkins. And then they also sign a pitcher by the name of Leroy Satchel Paige. So Leroy Satchel Paige joins the House of David. He didn't have to grow a beard or anything. He's only there for the Denver Post Tournament. And he comes in, and basically the Monarchs lose 2 games in the tournament.
Growing up around my dad, you had to love baseball. I mean, and we just loved baseball. It was a great game. My dad played all through high school. He played when he was little, I know that he got to watch the House of David teams play. I was, they were long gone by the time I came around.
The coolest story I can relate to the importance of the House of David baseball teams was told to me by the old guy that was a catcher for their team from 1926 to 1940, Lloyd Gallagher. And the fact that here's a white, long-haired, whiskered team, a super oddity in baseball, that is traveling the country, beating everybody, playing major league teams when they could find an opening, tried to join the major leagues, but they couldn't join because they wouldn't shave and cut their hair. And they weren't going to do that because that was getting them to heaven, they thought, right? So they just kept barnstorming. That's what it was called back then. They'd show up and play Farmer Joe's farm team, or they'd show up to play St. Louis Cardinals. And then played anywhere from cow fields to major stadiums. Late 1920s, early 1930s, they were invited to be a part of the Negro League baseball world, which was the blacks couldn't play in the majors because they were black, because of their skin color. America was very short-minded, and so they didn't allow them to play in the majors at that time. And they invited the House of David to be a part of their story and part of their leagues, and they're a big part of that story. And because of the popularity of the House of David teams, and because they were drawing more than any people in America at the time, they lit up stadiums for the first time in America. In 31, 32, stadiums around the United States never got lit before. So when it got dark, that was the end of the game. But I think the biggest part of the baseball part was the House of David would travel and play double headers and triple headers. And they would show up to your town in whatever part of Kansas you were in, and where you'd never allowed the black teams to come before. They would bring the Kansas City Monarchs or the Homestead Grays or the Piney Woods Negroes with them to play your team on this Saturday. And there's a doubleheader maybe scheduled at 11 and at 4. And they wouldn't tell you guys that they were bringing this black team with them. And they would show up early. They would put on a big act. They put on a big show. And they were musicians. They could dance. They could make you laugh. They would stand in front of the barbershops and wave their long hair and braid each other's hair and let the crowds braid it and sign baseballs. And Lloyd would tell the story that, Chris, we would be heading to that little town in Kansas, and 50, 60 miles outside of that town, as we passed through these little towns, no one was ever home. No one was around. It was like they were ghost towns. And we get to that town, and it was like a giant festival. And this happened all the time. And he said, so we knew everybody was there to see us play. So we wanted to really put on a show. And we would go into the manager of the baseball stadium of your town, and we'd stand there, and him and 2 other guys, or his father and some other players, and say, hey, we're excited that your town is so pumped about us being here. And we can't wait to put on a show because we know you're going to love it. And but here's the deal, sir. before you play us at 11, you're going to play these guys sitting right outside of town in our other bus. And that's the Kansas City Monarchs or the Homestead Grays or whatever Negro team they're pulling in. You're going to play them. And not only that, and then you're going to play us afterwards. And after that, they're going to eat at the restaurants that you never let them eat in before. And then tonight, we rented rooms for all of us at the hotel that we always stay at, sir. And that has to all happen. Because if that's not going to happen, then we have a rain check to go 30 miles down the road and play that other team that's sitting on rain check just waiting for us to get there. So it's okay. If you can't play us today, it's okay. But, and Lloyd said, Chris, people would riot real easy back then. And you got thousands of people waiting for this game, probably the most ever in this town. And so there's no way the manager's going to not make this happen. And, he said, Chris, the managers would throw their clipboard or they'd scream or they'd punch the wall or they'd swear or they'd storm out of the room. But every time they'd somehow come back and say, we're going to play you guys. We're going to do this. But don't you ever, ever think that you're going to come back to my town. And he said, Chris, we would put on the most unbelievable show. And the cool thing was the Negro team was loved. They made the people laugh. They saw like a whole team of amazing athletes that they never saw before, because the Negro teams were phenomenal, and they would give them a standing ovation. And then of course our team was why they were there, and we would put on the show, Chris. We would do phenomenal. It was like fireworks, 4th of July when we would get done. And guess what? They were very cordial, and we tipped well in the restaurants, and they let us both stay in the hotel. And the ultimate thing was, next year, they invited us both back. And we did that around America, town after town after town. And so I feel like what I've learned in 30 some years of studying this and interviewing is that the House of David 100% drew the line and said, that's enough. It broke the color barrier way before Jackie Robinson broke into the majors.
We're back on the House of David Life Everlasting here in the studio with Chris Siriano, my co-host. Good to have you back.
Good to be here.
Yeah, and on the phone, Phil S. Dixon, as promised, Negro League historian, baseball historian, general baseball knowledge guy, probably one of the tops around.
In the planet.
So, How are you today, Phil? How's everything going?
Everything is wonderful.
We like when we hear wonderful things. And we're actually today, for this a baseball topic, it is actually a wonderful topic. One of the things that probably, not just the good baseball brought the fans in, but these antics of the players. I mean, these guys did leapfrogging across, during games and before games. They played the pepper game, and were the pioneers of it. Donkey baseball, which certainly is a pretty funny scene when you see it, and you just saw that in part of the film. So I guess, Chris, tell me a little bit about those antics, and then we'll get to Phil.
Yeah, and the House of David was the inventor of the pepper game, which was, I think, on the 4th inning stretch. The ball went between 3 guys and between their legs and around their heads and around their necks and juggled, and it was crazy, exciting, and the ball would disappear and the crowd would silence after being cheering and screaming, and one of the guys would pull his whiskers up and the ball would be hidden underneath there. And then with Ray Doan, they invented donkey baseball, which was crazy wild to watch and entertaining. So they brought, just like we talked about before, they brought people to the baseball stadiums that would have never, ever thought about coming to watch a baseball game. Yeah. They really, really did.
In the last episode, Phil was talking about how they revolutionized baseball with the lights, but the pepper game and donkey baseball were kind of revolutionary also to bring in the fans and to have, it almost, when you look at the minor leagues today, it seems to be a lot of that same stuff. Tell me a little bit about how that progression, Phil.
Yeah, the interesting thing with the House of David, with the 3 guys that they would have out there doing, the tricks with the baseball. When I think about that, if you look at the Harlem Globetrotters, they have the little thing that they call like the circle, right? They would get there and they would do things with the basketball.
Mm-hmm.
But the House of David actually were the originators of that because they used three guys is pretty much doing the same thing. And so the fans are going to stop. And remember, the parks they played in, they're pretty close to the people. So people, everybody could see this act, right? Wasn't like modern stadiums where you got somebody up on the in the balcony on the 155th row, but they were down close.
Tell us a little more about Ray Doan, because he was the driving force behind really the marketing, the amazing marketing that they do. Because who comes up with, hey, you know what? Let's play a game and go grab some donkeys, and we'll structure a baseball game around donkeys. I mean, that's just crazy talk, it seems.
Yeah, well, Ray Doan, he was actually, believe it or not, a serious baseball guy. And he partnered with the Kansas City Monarchs owners, Tom Baird and Jill Wilkerson. And you couldn't come through the Midwest without going through those guys because they knew every hook, nook, and cranny. They knew everybody who had the money because they've been booking the Kansas City Monarchs through there since 1920. So by hooking up with them and then also hooking up with the teams from Chicago. So he was a pretty classy guy. He also later on had his baseball camp where he would have semi-professional baseball players. So say, for instance, the House of David's playing somewhere and they see a pretty good ball player. Well, he would invite them to his baseball camp in Hot Springs, Arkansas.
Yep.
And then he'd have Grover Cleveland come down, Rogers Hornsby. So he'd have legitimate players. Dizzy Dean came down. And he would recruit people and make money in the off season.
Did any of the Negro League teams or any of those teams that came across the House of David, did any of them adopt, the pepper game or emulate or, the donkey baseball or any of the other stuff that they did?
Well, the House of the black teams would use what they call shadow ball. So they would go through the infield motions like they were throwing a ball around, but they didn't really have a ball.
Uh-huh.
And later on, especially when they went into small towns, people wanted to see that kind of entertainment. So they would actually play the shadow ball. So sometimes if they're playing the House of David, the black team at one point in the game would do the shadow ball, typically during the warm-up, and then the House of David would come back, and they're going to finish up with their antics, right?
Yep. It was some of the greatest promoters, I think, in the history of our country were right then. Like Don King was such a huge boxing promoter back in the day, and these guys were all like that, and they teamed up together. So they really, really knew how to fill a stadium and get everybody's attention and love for the sport.
Well, and how much harder was it? Because they're going from town to town, and they're out putting flyers and posters up for people to find out about them. They're spreading the word that way. How were they able to do that, Phil? To be out ahead of the teams, especially when they're all driving around in buses and it's just kind of a crazy lifestyle. How do they get the word out?
Well, first of all, the advanced men, they had different advanced men that work with them. And those guys are some of the unsung heroes because we hardly know their names.
Right.
But they would send these guys out ahead, and they would work with the local promoters, and they were the ones who worked with the newspaper as far as sending photographs out to the newspaper. And without newspapers, newspapers were the thing because radio was in its infancy. And so newspapers were the thing. And I just don't know how history is going to be recorded without newspapers the way they're disappearing now. But newspaper, and actually they would come into town and they start promoting the game, weeks before they got there.
Right, yeah.
And they would draw not only from that city, but they're going to draw from all around that city. People would schedule their lives around coming to see the House of David, or just because they know they're coming.
And it's such a great game. But Phil, we need to end the show here. It's time to move on for our next episode. But I want to say thank you to Chris and, of course, to Phil S. Dixon on the phone. But next time when we come back, we're going to be talking about the players. And they've had many players that made huge impacts on the game, not just for the House of David, but Major League Baseball and everything else. And we're going to be talking about that next episode. So we'll see you next time right here on the House of David, Life Everlasting.
Telling incredible stories and keeping the past alive, Moondog Productions is proud to bring you the great history of the House of David in Southwest Michigan. Find out more about Moondog Productions by going online to moondogpro.net.
The House of David Museum is proud to tell the stories of Southwest Michigan's rich history. Located in St. Joseph, Michigan, the House of David Museum has a wide array of memorabilia for your viewing pleasure. To schedule a tour, call 269-325-0039.
Post-production facilities provided by True Blue Farms in Grand Junction, Michigan. True Blue Farms has been contributing to the overall health and wellness to people all over the world for over 100 years with blueberries. Find out more at truebluefarms.com.
Telling Southwest Michigan's history through radio and podcast. Rob Bird's Moondog Show and the House of David podcast are happy to be a part of telling this great story. Find Rob Bird's Moondog Show or the House of David podcast at podbean.com.